What's up, everybody? How are you guys doing today? I'm
How's
Nehemiah
it
Frank
going?
with the Black Wall Street Times, and this is, I guess, another episode of Inside the Black Wall Street Times, Black Ink. We just launched this thing, I want to say last week, and I think this is probably like our, fourth time doing this in the evening on Substack?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe fifth time, because I guess the first time technically was when we were in Detroit for the Bomisi Summit.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, if you're tuning in, welcome. If you're tuning in for the first time, I'm Nehemiah Frank, founder, editor in chief of the Black Wall Street Times. I'm also a descendant of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre in the historic Greenwood community known as Black Wall Street. So I did not just hijack the name, the Black Wall Street, and just decided to throw it on because it sounded popular. I did it to honor the people in my community and our incredible legacy. And I am here with my two colleagues. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, y'all.
Hey y'all, I am Dion Osborne, managing editor, and I am happy to be able to talk about news that's actually positive for a change. So looking forward to this conversation.
Nice. And I'm Andrew, aka Mr. Earth Your Birth, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer.
Excellent. Well, let's just go ahead and dive right on in. But before that, how are y'all doing today? We're almost done with this week.
I'm good.
Like I said, I'm just glad that I got to, witness and cover something positive. So feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah, it's a good
stuff. Well, let's just go ahead and jump right into that positive news. So the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court has made history in a landmark decision. The court ruled that descendants of freedmen, people once enslaved by the tribe, are entitled to full tribal citizenship. The ruling struck down a section of the tribal constitution that limited citizenship to those with Creek blood. The court said that violated the 1866 treaty between the tribe and the U.S. government. And so this decision ends decades of apartheid-like exclusion and sends a clear message. Freedmen descendants have rights. And here today joining me is my incredible colleague, Dion Osborne, as he has just mentioned, the managing editor for the Black Wall Street Times, to talk a little bit about the press conference today and I guess the history of his reporting on Black freedmen in Oklahoma. How are you today, Dion?
Yeah, doing good. I guess I would say the biggest news, of course, is that this kind of is the period on a years-long battle, decades-long battle, really, of freedmen descendants trying to regain citizenship, into the tribe of their ancestors. And so at the press conference, Attorney Demario Solomon Simmons with the Justice for Greenwood Foundation basically just, it was really a moment to just celebrate, is what I would say. It was a moment to celebrate. They kind of took turns just sharing the good news, sharing what it meant to them, sharing what they hope can come from it. He multiple times stressed that he's hopeful. He said he wants to meet with the chief, principal chief of the Muscogee Creek Nation and their leadership in a week or within a week to try and come to, some type of amicable, healing, reconciliation. Mm-hmm. And so, some reporters were asking, does this mean that, Creek descendants can right now start applying? And he said yes. He said that the Supreme Court's ruling demands that. But he didn't exactly say that it was going to be easy. He did say that he's hopeful that this meeting can take place. So right now we don't know what's going to happen as far as whether this ruling will be challenged. But as for today, it was Black joy on display.
Oh, that's amazing. So is the Creek chief planning to escalate this in any way, or like is he planning on taking it federally? Like what's coming up next?
Right. That's the question. That's the question. There were reports that he was already making some, considerations on that side, or maybe some city councilors might be making some considerations of filing federal lawsuits on their own. But I guess to understand what the craziness of that is, like you had asked, to kind of go back to how this all got started. Essentially, the 5 civilized tribes is what they were referred to as: Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole, they at some point enslaved Black people. And adopted some of those, European style forms of chattel slavery, not just, chattel slavery. And so in 1866, these 5 tribes signed a series of treaties with the U.S. government. A part of each of the tribes participated on the Confederacy side. And so they signed a treaty with the U.S. government, basically coming to an agreement that they would abolish slavery on their lands, just as the 13th Amendment, I believe, abolished slavery in the U.S., and that the descendants, that freedmen and their descendants, would have all the same rights and benefits and privileges and citizenship as any native citizen.
So you're saying that 70 years after the civil rights movement in the U.S., right, after voting rights take place in the United States, right, after African Americans receive, I guess, what is essentially their full citizenship in 1965 for the first time in our country's history, that decades after that, we still have Black Creeks, Black indigenous people who are fighting for their own civil rights still.
Absolutely. I mean, Juneteenth, we just had Juneteenth last month, and I had wrote a piece for Substack. Check out my Substack, indepthwithdion.substack.com. And I talked about how Muscogee Creek freedmen are not free on Juneteenth because before this ruling, apartheid-like conditions, or I guess some people, Eli Grayson, he's a historian and a Creek citizen, he refers to it as badges of slavery, where basically the U.S. government divided up these 5 tribes to be on 2 different roles in order to divide up their land and open up more land for white settlement. And they divided it up in a segregated way where some people who they just thought looked Black or looked of African descent, they placed on the freedmen role, even if they had a blood lineage. And so basically this ruling struck down the by blood language in the Constitution, because in 1979, this is the last thing I know, I'm rambling, in 1979, the Creek Nation citizens voted for a new constitution that basically eliminated freedmen and descendants from being enrolled. And so this has been over a 40-year fight to restore that.
Wow. So we're going to listen to some of that Black joy that happened today from the press conference. And we're going to start off with Oklahoma State Representative Ronnie Stewart, who is actually a Creek freedman himself.
And being in that position, I have the pleasure and the honor of representing numerous Black Creeks. And this has been something that has been fought for, cried over, prayed over for years and for generations. And I knew I was on the right track in my thoughts when I listened to Brother Ron Graham speak, because he said everything I wanted to say. So, but the one point that I really want to drive home is when he said that this is a victory for the Creek Nation. Mm-hmm. When you, in essence, choose to cherry pick what you want to support from the Treaty of 1866, you weaken the treaty language altogether. You make yourself vulnerable to outside influence and possibly attacks from those that may want to do away with the language altogether. But by sticking to the letter of the law, although there may be a lot of different thoughts and emotions going on amongst different groups of people today, the Creek Nation won. That's right. To strengthen the Treaty of 1866, which strengthens the sovereignty that we so truly hold true to our hearts. This was a victory for the nation, and in the spirit of reconciliation and forging a path forward, I encourage those conversations to happen, and that Chief invites our group to the table, and I would love to be part of that. And so that we can, as a unified nation, move forward and forge a new path, one of reconciliation and one of unity. And that's all I have for you all today. Thank you very much.
It's amazing. So he said that it strengthens the Creek Nation. Do you think that the chief feels the same as Oklahoma State Representative Ronnie Stewart?
I'm not sure, because I know that his office untagged himself from my Facebook post explaining this decision. But what I do know is that throughout the trial, we were one of the few newsrooms in that courtroom, which, let me tell you, well, we can get to the hostility but later. But throughout that trial, the arguments from Attorney DeMar Solomon Simmons for the plaintiffs, the Creek Freedmen, were continually the same thing. You can't cherry pick, as a representative said, certain parts of the treaty and choose to amplify Article 1, which reaffirms jurisdiction over much of eastern Oklahoma, but then ignore Article 2, which says those descendants of the freedmen that you freed, yeah, they're citizens too. And so, but the argument on the Attorney General's for the Muscogee Creek Nation side was basically tribal sovereignty gives them the right to alter citizenship eligibility as they see fit. And so does the 1979 Constitution reign supreme, or does the 1866 treaty with the U.S. government reign supreme? And what the Muscogee Creek Nation Supreme Court decided was that the 1866 treaty reigned supreme.
Wow, that is incredible.
Interesting.
That takes a lot of courage, for their own judicial system to be able to rule in such a way. So next, we will hear from the lead attorney for the Justice for Black Creeks campaign. You asked a question to him, and let's hear his response.
The current plaintiffs with Ron, with your grandmother and Creek descendants for decades. For question for Rhonda and Jeff. Some people on social media are wondering why you would want to fight so hard to re-enter a nation that has fought so hard to keep you out. Why?
Is that a question for
Rhonda and Jeff?
Did you hear that? Rhonda, did you hear that?
I did hear it.
Okay.
Did hear it. I have an answer for that. It's no different from the United States enslaved people of African descent. The Creek Nation enslaved people of African descent. But people who were from the States, they're not going to say that we no longer want to be a citizen of the United States because the United States enslaved people of African descent. It's no different for us who were enslaved by the tribes. It is our birthright. We were a part of the nation. Our people were forced removed on the Trail of Tears. They scouted the land and paved the way for safety to the new land of Indian Territory. Our people served side by side during the Civil War with the Muscogee people, fighting 3 battles all along the way to the free northern state of Kansas. These people were family, and there was a commitment by Chief Opithalahola. He said, if you join my party to Kansas, you will be as free as your masters. These people intermarried together, fought together, they prayed together, they laughed together. We are Muscogee people. It is our birthright.
Yeah. I think she said it good. One thing I would add is that also we have been a part of this nation since the Europeans got here. And I'm not saying that, but Dr. Daniel Littlefield, who is the foremost expert in this area out of the University of Arkansas, testified under oath in 2005 that Black Creeks, or Creeks of African descent, were here when the Portuguese or the Spanish showed up in the 1500s. So we've always been a part of this nation, and as Rhonda stated, we helped build this nation. In fact, you think about one of my ancestors, Moses Perryman, who was unfortunately one of the largest slaveholders in the Creek Nation. The Perryman family are the founders of Tulsa, and they were known to have these huge ranches. Who built these ranches? Who worked these ranches? Who cleared these ranches? The people that were enslaved. So now we're just going to give up our birthright, what our ancestors fought and died for. Then on the other side of my family, look at Cal Tom. He was already free before the treaty. He negotiated the treaty. He signed the treaty. So how you going to take my citizenship now? He was already a citizen even before the treaty, you see? So all those histories are, and we know our history. That's why we keep saying, know your history. Mm-hmm. And I wish a lot of people online, they don't know our history. They don't understand, and that's just showing their bias.
Thank you.
All right.
Wow, that was great.
Yeah.
It was a great response. It kind of reminds me of the massacre, the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, I had wondered for the longest time, like, well, why did they stay? Well, when you've worked hard for something and that's your community, or it's the first time in your family's history being in this on this continent to actually be able to have ownership of land and property, you're not just going to run away from that. It is your birthright, and I think that she made that quite clear.
I mean, ultimately, yeah. I mean, the entire South, a lot of times people will talk negatively about the politics, but it's also got the highest concentration of Black people, So a lot of people decided to stay and to, fight and build the future they wanted to see.
So you've been so just one last thing. So you've been writing about this for like what, 3 to 4 years, maybe even longer than that. You've been following this story. So how does it feel like as a journalist to be able to go and especially as a Black journalist, you're proximate to these Black freedmen's, these Creek freedmen's. What is it to be able to start at the beginning of it as a reporter, and then nearly half a decade later, you're seeing this end? Did you see it coming? Did you see them,
well,
getting this victory today?
No, I definitely didn't see it coming this soon, the ruling at all this soon. And I thought that, I think it's clear that the clear language of the law doesn't give any other answer, but I didn't know if there was going to be anything funny happening. So no, I didn't know if this would ever happen. You could tell by my question that I'm so used to being in a kind of a press conference where it's like, who hurt who, and what's the best question I can ask to really dive into that. And I was like, okay, this is a victory for people. And so what can I ask that can bring meaning or some understanding? And so I'm glad he was able to share why it's important and why, as they said, it's their birthright. I think 2019, they had some type of rally in the Greenwood Cultural Center. And I think that was my first time covering it. And then to go to 2023, the end of 2022, early 2023, where they were having the court hearings leading up to the trial in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, which is the headquarters of the Creek Nation. It was wild. That was really my first experience. I was learning the history as I was reporting on it. And, I didn't even learn that I myself was a Cherokee freedman until, really the tail end of all of this, because I've been kind of putting off my own ancestry. And so it's kind of surreal. I was kind of not in shock, but just like, I don't even know how to take this in, So I'm just happy to be able to amplify, Black joy wherever it is.
Well, congratulations on all of that historic reporting. It looks like it definitely paid off. And I'm sure that the Justice for Black Creek members are definitely proud of your courageous journalism. So we're going to move on, y'all. We're going to move next to William McNeil, the whole situation that took place in Florida. They had their press conference yesterday. And so we're going to talk about the facts, since we have more of them after yesterday's press conference. And so we're going to start off with the incident overall for those who don't know too much about the case. So William McNeil, he was 22. He's a 22-year-old African-American who lives in Jacksonville, Florida. He was pulled over, and he was pulled over for allegedly driving without a seatbelt and driving without headlights. Now, I don't understand how the police officer could see that he didn't have his seatbelt buckled or unbuckled until he actually pulled up to him, right? And so the other thing is the other fact that we have is the video shows officers breaking his car window, punching him, then dragging him out. McNeil appeared calm the whole time, even after receiving the punch to the face, with hands raised, asking why he was stopped. He sustained a concussion, a broken tooth, stitches to his lip, and later reported that he had short-term memory loss. Then the Jacksonville sheriff, T.K. Waters, launched both criminal and administrative reviews stripping Officer D. Bowers of frontline duties, but he wasn't fired. So he is still on the police force at this moment. The state attorney's office determined none of the officers violated criminal law. No charges were filed. Police claimed that McNeil reached for a knife on the floorboard, but neither dash cam nor body cam footage shows this. McNeil's legal team alleges the claim was fabricated. And I think that that is one of the most aggravating parts of this situation is that, I mean, the police, essentially, they tried to frame him and say that there was a knife. They tried to justify the excessive use of force.
Yeah.
Come to find there was no evidence of there being a knife or him reaching down for it at all because he had video himself.
We talked about that a little bit when we watched the original video, how they set up these framings of it so they can use this plausible deniability later. What from the example of them just pulling him out and how rough they're getting and screaming, "Stop resisting" at the same time when he's very clearly not resisting. But the idea that at any point he started recording earlier than the body cam showed us in the car. I don't know what point of this they're telling us that he would have reached for a knife. First, they told us the phone footage was out of context because there was more that happened outside of the vehicle. Then we get the body cam footage and see that actually it just makes them look worse. But now there was something else inside the vehicle that took place that none of them captured. That's very ironic at this point.
Right. And then also, so one of our Substack writers just wrote, and didn't they have to unbuckle his seatbelt to drag him out of the car? That's what I saw. And so I'm actually going to go back. Now that she brings that up, I'm wondering, maybe I think I did see them do that, but I'll have to go back just to, double verify and see if they did have to buckle him out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, with the knife, they would have shown that knife at that press conference. They would have blasted it all over social media if they had a knife. So
yeah,
it's a lie. We have to look at is George Floyd in Minneapolis, Tyree Nichols in Memphis, Mike Brown in Ferguson. Look at the police reports versus the body cam video. Police lie.
That's good.
And I'm glad that Attorney Crump was quick to hop on this case because Jacksonville taxpayers are about to pay up.
Definitely agree. So as far as the video and body camera footage, so here are the facts around that. So McNeil's cell phone footage of the incident went viral, promoting national attention, and body-worn camera footage has since been released showing McNeil initially cooperating, then locking his door before the officers forcibly removed him. The actual punches aren't clearly visible in the body cam footage of the police officers. Luckily, he had his own cell phone footage to be able to capture that. I also want to just make note that the reason why he opened his door in the first place, we learned from watching the video, is because he had said that his driver window could not go down. That was the reason why he opened the door. And then he was met with a harsh tone from the police officers.
Yeah.
But then he saw another officer walking with his hand either on the gun or had already drawn his gun and was pointing at him. So he didn't feel safe. That was the reason why he shut the door and asked to speak to a supervisor. Another fact is that he actually did roll the window down. He rolled the passenger window down and was speaking with a second officer that was on the scene before a whole bunch of them pulled up. But I also want to make note that there was another vehicle that pulled up, police car, and that car didn't have any headlights on. And so now a lot of people are actually talking about that.
All right.
So next is the legal fallout of McNeil's statement. So McNeil, represented by attorney Ben Crump and attorney Henry Daniels, has publicly described the incident as traumatic, racially motivated attack. He says he feared for his life and now struggles with PTSD-like symptoms, insomnia, and flashbacks. And I will tell you, as a Black person in this country, and especially as a Black male, I have PTSD when it comes to police officers. If I don't know the police officer, I'm triggered. I'm terrified. Last time we were on, Andrew and I had gone over my own encounter with a police officer in Oklahoma who ended up searching my vehicle. I was terrified the entire time. He kept asking me why I'm nervous. I really wanted to say, because you're a white police officer, I'm in the rural South, And yes, I'm terrified. I have a validated bias, towards, police officer or law enforcement officers because of the history of policing against Black bodies in this country.
And the current police killings, honestly, I mean, I see it as sharks. And every once in a while, you meet a good shark that, wants to be your friend and grab coffee every now and then. But for the most part, that's just kind of my PTSD is like, whether I'm, broken the law or speeding or not, it's just, you don't know who you're going to get. It's the luck of the draw of what kind of demeanor, the history of that officer when it comes to their violence. We have lots of officers who've traded from department to department. So yeah, I get it.
And if you're listening out there on Substack or on any of our other social media platforms, feel free to ask a question. We'll read them out and we can have a discussion about them.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue with the legal fallout of McNeil's statement. So he pleaded guilty to resisting arrest without violence and driving on a suspended license, resulting in a brief jail sentence. Other charges like marijuana possession were dropped. And here's the thing, that they trumped up all of these charges because they wanted to smirch his character, right? This McNeil has never been in trouble with the law ever in his life. He's been described as an outstanding student at a HBCU. He's in the band and is a mentor for kids in his neighborhood. Has never been in any type of trouble with authority. And it's just so interesting, like the police officer that pulled him over would not have known that there was marijuana inside the vehicle, would not have known that his license was suspended. He may not have even known that his license was suspended at the time.
Yeah.
And he definitely would not have been able to see if he was driving without his seatbelt.
So
about that,
I mean, it doesn't matter whether he had a suspended license or he didn't, whether he had marijuana or he didn't. On Attorney Crump's Instagram kind of video of the press conference, he had a third graphic, lower thirds, that said Rosa Parks moment. And when I saw that, I was like, what do you mean Rosa Parks moment? And then I started thinking about it. What he's saying is, whether it was the first time or not, Rosa Parks was the one who led that movement of, I'm not going to sit at the front of the bus. You're going to serve me just the way you would serve a white passenger. And what he's saying is that McNeil it does not have to abandon his constitutional rights because he's Black. And what I mean by that is, if a white person had asked for a supervisor, they would have got a supervisor. But when a Black person asks for a supervisor, they think, how dare you ask, at least these officers, how dare you? Who are you to tell me what to do? Who are you to request a supervisor? Who are you to exercise your constitutional rights with me? You do what I say and that's it. And Rosa Parks moment, meaning this is a test of, is that going to be okay moving forward? Or are the courts going to step in and say, no, this is not how you can do policing?
Right. And then Kirshna, she on our Substack, she just said, and why is it that in these situations, not having a driver's license is a slur on a person's character? It's very shady work. Completely agree with that statement. So let's continue. So McNeil and his lawyers have announced a civil rights lawsuit against the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, citing excessive force and racial bias, and plan to urge the Justice Department to investigate. By the way, Dion, did you get a chance to see what the sheriff, what was his name, Waters, had to say about McNeil's arrest?
Remind me, because I try not to. I'd rather read the BS than to watch the BS a lot of times. So you might have to.
He pretty much said that none of his officers broke the law at all, and is pretty much blaming McNeil for the excessive use of force.
Well, and it comes from the top down. So he's essentially saying that he doesn't believe McNeil has a right to ask for a supervisor. And
he's a Black man, by the way, that's saying this, which is extremely shocking.
It's It's really not, though, because if you look at Memphis and Tyree Nichols, it was Black people who beat him to.
It's a good point.
You know, I think we forget a lot of times that even in the 60s and in the 90s when NWA was talking about police brutality, a lot of times it was people who looked like us who were beating on us too.
That's true. That's good. Let's move to the next one, public and political reaction. So civil rights advocates have condemned the incident, calling for firing of the officer and systemic reform. The case has been likened to modern driving while Black scenarios. And you, of course, mentioned that Attorney Crump, as he did in the press conference, mentioned Rosa Parks. Shout out to Attorney Griggs from the Atlanta area. He's also the state NAACP president for Georgia, and he was also at the press conference. He actually spoke. So civil rights advocates are condemning this. The Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, which we already knew he was going to do, backed local law enforcement despite not viewing the video, emphasizing confidence in Sheriff Waters. And then McNeil's attorneys say the official arrest report is inconsistent with the evidence. Seatbelt use is contradicted on the video, and the knife claim is dubious. Any last minute thoughts about this, guys?
No, I mean, honestly, like you said, I think the taxpayers are going to end up paying out for this one, and rightfully, the sad part is it's the taxpayers. I think the bigger issue is there's no repercussions on the police. Like, people should be losing their job for this, and not be putting on timeout and then being brought back in to do what they were doing before. I think that's the biggest thing that we know just all too often is not the thing that happens is when it comes to holding the cops accountable. So,
right.
And well, I'm not even gonna say that. I'll leave it with that. Yeah, let's leave it there.
Sounds good. So Black America is talking about the William McNeil police brutality video. But some of us in the rest of the country, they're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. This is still the saga that is hitting major news waves, which is one of the reasons why we haven't really been talking about it, because everybody else is talking about it. But we know that some folks that are watching probably want to hear a little bit about what that update is. Andrew, do we have an update about Jeffrey?
I mean, it's changing moment to moment. If you've paid attention the last couple of days, it's pretty much been confirmed at this point that the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, had alerted Trump back in the spring that he was in the files. As for the last couple of days, as we found out on our last live stream, that they were going to be recessing early. So the full vote of going through and actually, getting this disclosed to the public is going to be delayed for, sounds like, at least 2 months. Obviously, there's still been some pressure from some people to make sure this gets out. There was the original vote in the House that had 3 Republicans participate on it, wanting to push those files out. But as for whether it happens is still up to the Senate, from my understanding. So obviously, as we said before, I don't think anybody's surprised that he's in it. We're also not surprised that there's people on both sides in it. And for anybody that's always kind of trying to make this a partisan situation, this seems like a very simple one to unite everybody on the fact that we want to hold people accountable. This is a top-down problem. As we've said all too often, this is not a left-right problem. This is a focus on the people at the top and people taking advantage of people and manipulating lives. And it's not about one person. It's not about Bill Clinton. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about anybody who has been complicit in this happening. And we've all known it has happened. We know there's a client list. We know that evidence is there. The gaslighting isn't going to work. It's time to just show us what's in it. So,
right. That's good.
Well, he's counting on that 2-month recess to blow over and hope that this Obamagate nonsense is going to be enough to get him through this moment.
Yeah, I mean, for every racist out there that's really going to fall for that dog whistle at this point again, it's such an insult to anybody with 2 brain cells at this point. We get it. You hate Obama, but let's be real. If that's enough to distract you at this point, step aside and let us pay attention to what's actually in these files so we can hold people accountable.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it's their last playbook because they know it's worked since Bacon's Rebellion. oh, let's just throw racism into it, and these people who should all be together will stay divided while we, do what we do. But I think that maybe this time there will be a break and there will be a crack in like the zeitgeist or whatever.
Good stuff. Well, hey guys, we don't have much time left. But before we let you go, and before I give the last report, we are a few paid subscribers away from reaching 200 paid subscribers on Substack. I think we're probably still in the top 30 for news on Substack, which is absolutely remarkable considering the size of our newsroom and where we're located, and rooted in Tulsa, but speaking to the world. But if you want to, if you're feeling charitable and you want to help this Black-led and Black-owned newsroom be successful, please donate. You can donate for $8 a month, or you can pay $80, which will save some money and you'll help power our stories. Or you can do $250 and make yourself a founding member for our Substack. Every dollar literally helps us continue this work. We know, as you know, media is under attack. Recently, PBS and NPR have had their funding slashed because of the federal government, and they're at risk of closing. And so a lot of those people will need jobs as well. And so hopefully we'll be able to be in a position to provide for some relief for some of them.
Yeah, I mean, at the press conference, the last thing I'll say at the press conference, I was sitting next to a journalist from a local, NPR station, and he was telling us about, how the cuts are already impacting them, and luckily they've had a greater amount of contributions from listeners in a response, and so we're independent media. And we don't have all the resources that public and nonprofit media has. And so we definitely be grateful for all the support that you can give for sure.
Also, another plug, we are fiscally sponsored by Report for America and Ground Truth Project. So you can make a tax deductible donation as well. But also, if you donate, we're actually having a contest right now. We don't know who this person is going to be, but whoever becomes our 200 subscriber will get a mug. And I just opened it, so that's probably the reason why you guys heard all of that. It is a Black Wall Street Times mug from our digital store. Ooh, I feel so special actually getting to hold this thing. It looks really nice. Came out really, really nice.
Yeah.
But I will be putting some tea in this later today and probably sitting on my patio. But yes, look how nice that mug is. So that will also go to supporting our newsroom. So the last report today, guys, is this new story that is coming out of the diabetes research. And so a major study in sub-Saharan Africa has revealed a new previously unknown subtype of diabetes in children and young adults. Researchers found that 65% of patients diagnosed with type 1 diabetes didn't show the usual signs: no autoimmune attack, no genetic markers typically linked to the disease. This new subtype doesn't fit existing global definitions, and that's a serious problem. So why is this important? Because misdiagnosis means many African and Black youth in America could be receiving the wrong treatment. Insulin therapy may not work the same, and the health risks can be life-threatening. The study published global implications. So when researchers reviewed US data, they found this diabetes subtype in a smaller number of Black American children, but not a single case in white children. Experts say this discovery challenges the long and held assumptions in medicine. It also underscores the need to consider race, environment, and access to care when diagnosing chronic conditions like diabetes. And so the reason why I allowed for our journalists to actually write about this story, and we often highlight these types of stories specifically, is because there is still a lack of Black medical researchers or just Black doctors, period, in the medical field. And so when there is a lack thereof, situations like this happen. And so I'm happy that, they decided to put funding into this. Someone decided to go and research this population, and they actually found something, that there's been decades of kids receiving medicine, Black children in the US and African children, medicine that is not even working for them. What are y'all thoughts about that?
That's wild, but it's shocking, but not surprising, because when you think about the lack of research dedicated to diseases that more greatly impact people of African descent, period, it's a huge disparity. I don't know much about this. I can't speak much about diabetes, but it does remind me of, you've covered sickle cell. I've covered sickle cell. There's new and increasing treatments and even the cure, allegedly, when it comes to this, the technology they're using, the gene editing technology. But for decades, they were given the wrong medications, or they were given medications for like generic cancers that really didn't impact sickle cell, And so I'm glad to see these researchers are, righting a wrong, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is one of those examples that, especially, when I think of like the uneducated white people that'll come to me, or I've talked to, whether it's friends, family, or strangers, that'll say something like, well, how does racism still exist? And again, so many of these people want to think that it can be just purely malicious, rather than just something like this that is systemic, just not having the right data, not having enough resources put into the science to make sure we take care of people where they need to be taken care of, how they need to be taken care of. And I think when you take a general broad swath approach to medicine, especially in healthcare or even education, then this is the type of stuff that gets overlooked. So obviously this is somewhat good news that we've found this out now, but it's also something that we know isn't the only example of this. This is all too common in the medical world when it comes to people of color, or especially women in different categories, depending on what you're looking at.
Wow, that's a really, really good point. And they are lighting it up on Substack with those hearts, because they like what you guys are saying. There is one more point that I wanted to make. So if you think about recently, the House and Senate, Congress passed this huge budget bill that does lots of cuts to mega cuts, actually, to medical research. There's been a continuous attack on DEI or CRT, and continuous attacks on affirmative action. And as a matter of fact, affirmative action is actually up, for discussion on the U.S. Supreme Court, and could be overturned. And so you think that that type of funding is what made this story possible, this discovery possible. So hundreds of kids, thousands of kids are actually going to be able to have their lives saved, because they're going to be able to get the right medicine to keep them alive, and including adults, right? And so those funding cuts are going to create a deficit for this type of research. Any last thoughts, y'all? Because we're wrapping it up.
I mean, just, I think that we need to not be afraid to say the quiet part out loud when it comes to what we're dealing with in this country. And whether it's police brutality, whether it is discrimination on tribal lands, or in the U.S., with fascist ICE raids, I think we need to be willing to say what we need to say. And as journalists, I think there needs to be more outspokenness calling out these attacks against the Constitution, because what are we here for if we're not here to preserve democracy?
Good stuff, Andrew.
Yeah, I guess, a word of gratitude today. I think it's important, again, with the news cycle right now. It feels like everything is negative, but there are these silver linings like this that involve progress, and highlighting those stories when we can, and making sure, again, that when it comes to police brutality or any of the examples like we're seeing in Jacksonville, that the stories don't just become stories that the details matter, and we don't let them just become people that are demonized in statistics of how they interact with police, or we also pay attention to the accountability of statistics that cops are not held accountable when they need to be. So I think just, again, holding that light to the flame, or that light.
I don't know how you say it.
What's a bad analogy, but yeah, you get the point. But being the light of truth, I guess, is the point, and just making sure we hold people accountable and then hold ourselves accountable as well.
Good. So speaking of accountable, I'm going to do something unconventional, which is kind of call out one of our commenters. I'm happy I didn't pull them up on the screen today, but I believe in justice over here at the Black Wall Street Times. We believe in racial equity, and we also believe in our advocates. And I will always defend all of our advocates, no matter what their race is, their social economic background is. And I don't take too kind to racist comments, even if they're directed at our non-melanated advocates and activists and team members at the Black Wall Street Times. So the next time I see something like that on our screen, I'm definitely going to block you completely. This is a learning space for all of us. And we would be hypocritical to say that diversity matters and not have a diverse team of people over here. So with that said, please fund the Black Wall Street Times. Make your donations on Substack. Join our Substack. Become a paid subscriber, $8 a month, $80 a year, or $250 to be a founding member. And then, of course, don't forget to check out In Depth with Dion. He's got an incredible podcast that goes out just about every single week. He is also a longtime journalist at the Black Wall Street Times, but he's building his Substack because we do believe in empowering journalists over here as individuals, and not just contributing to the newsroom, but building their own path. So with that said, thank you so much for joining the Black Wall Street Times, and we will hopefully get to see you tomorrow if we feel like it, because it's Friday and we may not feel like doing a live. But anyways, y'all, have a wonderful and blessed Thursday afternoon. Peace.
You too.